All right, sorry, we were just testing that out. I think we're all set. We should be able to hear us now. Testing, can you hear me? All right. Sorry about that, guys. Just some technical challenges. But as we get started, before we get into our discussion today, I wanted to touch on three headlines that I thought were very interesting and important to our listeners and our clients. As you can imagine, and as you're probably aware, it seems that every day there's something new with immigration that is of importance or impacts whether our employers or individuals or our immigration system. But I wanted to highlight three of them before we dive into our discussion as we wait for more people to join us today. All right. So the first one is the first of the three is a Florida city has signed a formal agreement with ICE to assist in immigration enforcement. Under the deal, local law enforcement will notify ICE when undocumented immigrants are arrested and may hold them for transfer. City officials say that the agreement is meant to support national security and uphold the law. Critics argue it could lead to civil rights concerns and strain trust between immigrant communities and the police. The next one is confirmed by the CBP. This is very important. U.S. visas will be revoked in 2025 for individuals with uncorrected visa application inconsistencies. The most common issue involves mismatched information between the DS-160 form and prior travel or immigration records. Thousands are unaware that even minor discrepancies can trigger automatic revocation. If you suspect an irregularity, now is the time to reach out, review your case, and get it corrected immediately. The third highlight that I wanted to share with everyone today is a 19-year-old college student was detained following a traffic stop in Colorado, sparking legal concerns. Body cam footage shows officers handcuffing the student without clear probable cause. Civil rights advocates argue the detainment may violate Colorado law on police conduct and constitutional protections. An internal investigation is underway as as public scrutiny intensifies. So these are the three highlights or news that I would like to highlight and bring to your attention. If any of these resonate with you or you have additional information, please go ahead, share that in the chat below, or feel free to reach out to us if this is something that is of concern to you or people that you know. Well, everyone, welcome to another live stream here on the Ray Law International channel. Thank you for joining us. My name is Anthony Ray. I'm an immigration attorney with deep experience helping companies manage challenges in hiring and retaining global talent. Thank you for joining today's discussion. The purpose of this talk is to explain how U.S. immigration travel bans, particularly the current policy-driven ones, are affecting businesses that rely on immigrant employees. Why is this important to you as the employer? Because today, many companies, whether in tech, healthcare, academia, or manufacturing, depend on international talent to compete and grow. When a travel ban hits, it just doesn't affect governments or headlines. It impacts your people, your operations, and ultimately your bottom line. Let's start by understanding how and what is an immigration travel ban. These travel bans are often issued by executive order, the Department of Homeland Security regulations, or by counselor level decisions. They might suspend visas issuance entirely for nationals of specific countries, bar entry at U.S. borders, or create a heavy processing delays that operate as de facto travel bans. It is important to distinguish between the COVID-era health-based bans, which are generally temporary, And today's policy bans, which are rooted in foreign policy, political ideology, national security, or regional instability. Now, let's look at some examples of these travel bans. First, we can see countries such like Iran, North Korea, and Syria remain under long-standing restrictions due to terrorism-related concerns. Next, countries facing war or civil unrest, such as Sudan or parts of the Sahel region, are often placed under suspension or subject to consular drawdowns. And finally, even without formal bans, slow visa adjudication, especially in countries like Russia and Afghanistan, create an effective barrier to entry into the U.S. Now, let's look at what agencies are involved. First, we have the State Department, which manages immigrant visas, issuance abroad, and visa interviews. Next, Customs and Border Protection, CBP. They make the final decision at ports of entry. And next, the USCIS, while domestic, plays a key role in petition approval and processing delays. Together, these agencies create a complicated web of restrictions that employers like you must carefully navigate. All right, let's go into the key impacts of these travel bans and how they impact us, okay? Also, if you have questions, go ahead, put those in the chat. We're here to answer your questions while we are giving you information about how these travel bans are impacting companies and organizations like yourself. It is also an opportunity for you to reach out to us and let us know what's on your mind or immigration concerns. So put those in the chat. We love to respond to, we will respond to your questions. Just put those in there. Now, let's get back to the travel bans. Now that we understand what these bans look like, let's talk about how they affect your workforce. Companies trying to bring in new hires from affected countries often face indefinite delays or outright denials. Even if candidates are ready, the lack of visa appointments or entry bans can delay or derail onboarding. In some cases, companies hire talent remotely, but even that is unsustainable for roles that require their presence here in the U.S. Current employees may risk international travel. We've seen situations where valued team members travel to visit family or attend conferences and find themselves stranded abroad due to sudden policy shifts or denied re-entry. Global assignments are now riskier, especially when involving third countries or unstable consulates. Another impact we see is family separation. These bans don't just affect the workers, but they often keep spouses and children and parents from joining them. And this has a huge impact. This takes an emotional toll on your employees, increasing stress, distraction, and burnout, all of which affects productivity and ultimately retention. Now, the uncertainty and morale of all this, perhaps the most damaging aspect is the climate of fear and uncertainty. We hear this every single day. When employees feel their ability to stay or return at risk, it leads to disengagement, anxiety, and sometimes attrition. They may begin job hunting in countries perceived as more favorable or stable, such as Canada, the UK, or even Australia. Now that we've covered the challenges, let's shift to solutions. Here are 4 key strategies you and every other employer can consider to overcome these travel bans. First, deals with compliance and planning. Track your international employees' visa validity, travel history, and entry risk. Establish a system to monitor policy updates and travel alerts, ideally in collaboration with Immigration Counsel. Proactively plan around consular delays, especially for workers with high-risk countries. Next, Adjusting mobility policies. Evaluate whether non-essential travel should be restricted for employees with impacted nations. Offer remote work options or domestic relocations to ensure business continuity. And finally, your business requires if your business requires travel, build a contingency plan such as third country visa options or staggered travel windows. Next, create an internal guidance for employees, including what to do before, during, and after travel. This is becoming even more important as entering the US has become more and more complicated. You want to offer access to immigration attorneys such as ourselves, webinars, or even mental health support for those impacted. And finally, transparency and empathy here go a long way in building trust and loyalty between you and your employee. And the fourth aspect that we want to look at is look at some of the alternatives. This is what we do with all our clients because you need to plan now for what we consider as the inevitable, but it's always good planning to have a backup plan. Where possible, consider shifting employees to alternative visa categories. For example, from H-1B to L visas for multinational staff. Some companies can pursue third country consular processing. Through this requires careful planning. We have many employees that have multiple passports, so they can still go to a different country, use that alternative country passport, obtain the visa, and enter the US. In some extreme cases, companies have helped relocate workers to subsidiaries in countries as a short-term strategy until conditions improve. Many companies will send their employees to Canada, Mexico, Europe, or Asia while we deal with these travel bans. So there are many alternatives to work around these travel bans and to keep your operations moving forward. So let's check to see if we have any questions at this point about the U.S. travel bans. For those who are unaware, initially there are 12 countries that are presently banned at different levels. For some, there's a full travel ban. For others, there is a partial travel ban. The administration is considering additional 36 more countries. So now is time to act. Don't wait. It's not going to get better, so you need to act now. On the family-based side, if you have family, friends, fiance, you want to get that process started yesterday. You know, we haven't had problems for the past 10, 15, 20 years. However, this administration believes that there may be some security concerns that need to be addressed, and that is one of the purported reasons for some of these travel bans. Bringing it all together, U.S. travel bans, whether formal or informal, are evolving and can seriously impact your hiring, the mobility, and the morale of your staff. These issues aren't going away, and businesses need to respond with foresight, compassion, and strategy. If your company hasn't done a travel risk audit, now is the time to do so. And if you're unsure of your exposure or planning approach, consult with us here at Ray Law International. The cost of waiting is far greater than the cost of preparation. We do have time for some questions before we wrap up. We wanted to keep it really, close around 20 minutes or so. Any questions from our audience? Again, for those who are joining us late, you're going to want to go back and watch the video at the beginning. We talked about 3 headlines of recent events that you're going to want to pay attention to and keep up to date. The Supreme Court, in addition, I didn't mention this at the beginning, before we wrap up, the Supreme Court should be making a decision on several immigration matters in the next week. in less than a week, as the Supreme Court wraps up their session before they go on summer break. A lot is at stake here in the US, and a lot of things have changed already, both on the employment side of immigration and on the family based side, and culturally, of how we handle due process and rights to citizens and those individuals here in the US. So it is very important that everyone stays attentive and active to what is going on, both at the executive level, at the congressional level, as well as the judicial level with our Supreme Court. So looking in the comments, I don't see any comments, but I do want to thank you for joining us. Thank you all for your attention and for being proactive leaders in supporting your global teams. Until next time, stay educated, stay informed, and stay on the right immigration path. Thank you.